Hi guys, I hope everyone's doing good. We miss y'all. So today's Wednesday, which means we're going to do our Bible study, because just because we're not going to meet in the classroom doesn't mean that we can still study the Bible, okay? So, like we've been learning on Wednesday, right? We've been doing the whole week leading up to when Jesus is going to get crucified, and then that's going to lead up to Sunday, which is going to be Easter. So we are on Thursday of that week, and today we're going to be talking about, it's going to be the Last Supper. So before I start though, me and Julio decided that we're going to do a challenge during this Bible study. So Julio has 5 challenges or questions for y'all throughout the study that I'll give today. And at the end of the video, what you're going to do is you're gonna, if you complete all 5 of the questions or tasks he gives you at the end of our Bible study, and you send them to us, then we have a prize for you. It's either gonna be a Chick-fil-A gift card or a Whataburger gift card. So one of those. But the whole goal is just for you to stay with me through the Bible study. We want you to stay with us. We want you to learn with us together. And you get to have a little fun while we do it, okay? So whenever you hear Julio speak, it's because he's going to give us one of the questions or tasks for you to do. And so basically you have to watch the whole video. That way you know which questions or what your challenge is going to be, okay? So anyways, let's start. We're going to be today in Luke 22, and then I'll read. So we're going to be in Luke 22 verses 1 through 21 today, okay guys? So stay with me even though it's a little bit long, but it says, Judas agrees to betray Jesus. And I might be out of a little breath today, guys, but it says, now the festival of unleavened bread, called the Passover, was approaching, and the chief priests and the teachers of the law were looking for some way to get rid of Jesus, for they were afraid of the people. Then Satan entered Judas, called Iscariot, one of the 12, and Judas went to the chief priests and of the officers of the temple guard and discussed with them how he might betray Jesus. They were delighted and agreed to give him money. He consented and watched for an opportunity to hand Jesus over to them when no crowd was present. Okay, so before I get into the study, I'll have Julio tell us your first question.
All right, so I just want to join the video here with my lovely wife. So it's the first one's a task, and it just is tell us the highlight of your day. So through a text, just give us the highlight of your day.
Okay, that's your first challenge. Okay. So it says that basically what happens. It's going to be basically the Passover, right? They're going to be celebrating in this week, which we know we've looked at. And then if you don't remember about the Passover, let's do a recap of what the Passover was. So remember when we did that study in Exodus, right? And then we were in Exodus 12. And then what happened? Pharaoh kept just disobeying God, right? Rejecting him. And so God is going to come and he was going to send the plague, right? Where he is going to kill the firstborns. And what happened? Jesus tells his people to take some hyssop, right? Which hyssop was basically like a bunch of herbs, right? They're together. And then he says, dip them, right? You're going to dip them in the lamb's blood that they're going to sacrifice. And you're going to put it on the door frames, right? And whenever you put the blood of the lamb on the door frames, what happens is the plague of death is going to pass over you. That's why it's considered Passover, right? Because the plague of death was going to pass over the houses that had the blood of the lamb over it, right? And we talked about it before. What are some things that what are some of the things that God told them they needed to do for this Passover meal? It was what? Basically, we know that they had the lamb. It was the roasted lamb. We know that they had the unleavened bread, right? We talked about that. And what else? what else did we have? We had the bitter herbs too, right? We talked about the bitter herbs before. So there was these three things, right, too, that God was told them that this is something they had to participate in during that week, right? And so that is what the Passover was, like we read before. And so now we're coming here, right? And we're in Luke, and they're celebrating this meal that they participated in Exodus, right? They're doing the Passover. And what happens is during this Passover, though, it says what? That the chief priest, let's go to verse 2. It says, and the chief priests and the teachers of the law were looking for some way to get rid of Jesus, for they were afraid of the people. So we have to remember, we have to look at the Pharisees, right? And we have to look at these religious leaders, let's say it like that. Okay? These chief priests and the teachers of the law, they basically were coming together, right? So if we read, they really didn't like each other, this group of people. But what happened is they both had one thing in common, and that was that they wanted to get rid of Jesus. So what they do is they come together and they're plotting a way to get rid of Jesus. They want Jesus dead, right? But why do they want Jesus dead? Well, because all these crowds, right, that Jesus has been preaching to, they've seen his miracles, they've heard him just teach, right? All these things. Well, they're starting to lose the people, right? The people are kind of starting to be more loyal to Jesus than to them, right? And so they don't like that, because if that continues to happen and people are no longer like focused on them or wanting to go to them, they lose their money, right? They can lose their money. It interrupts with the money that they can be getting and things like that, right? Their wealth and their power, right? They like to have power and wealth. And so with Jesus getting in the way of that, well, that's why they want him killed, in other words, right? So we'll look at that. And then another thing, let's go to verse 3. It says, then Satan entered Judas, one of the 12, and Judas went to the chief priests and the officers of the temple guard and discussed with them how he might betray Jesus, right? They were delighted and agreed to give him money. He consented and watched for an opportunity to hand Jesus over to them when no crowd was present. So what does this mean? We know that Judas is going to betray Jesus, right? And so this is what starts it, right? He goes to these chief priests, he goes to these religious leaders, and basically he agrees, he tells them that he can hand Jesus over to them. And so, but he hands Jesus over to them for what? For money, right? That's what they agreed to, right? And we have to look too, if you're curious to know about Judas, if we go to look at John 12:4-6, it talks about Judas, how he would steal money from, basically, he would steal money from, like, let's say a fund that they had, that the disciples had, right? So you know that, like me and Julio, we have a youth account, right? We have a youth fund for y'all guys, right? So when we want to do outings, when we want to do outreaches, right? So let's just say that we had this account, and let's say Judas had, like, the disciples, they all had an account too, and Judas would go and steal from that account,
It's
right?
like one of them, the youth was in charge of the account.
Yeah.
We let one of them just kind of oversee that.
Exactly. So it would be like if our youth account that we have for the youth group, right? It would be as if one of the youth, they just come and they start to steal from it, right? So that's what Judas basically, he would do. He was a thief. And so how ironic is that he goes to these religious leaders, and what is the thing that he's trading Jesus for? He's trading him for money, right? So apparently he had a temptation. He struggled with that. So we learned something from Judas too, though, because we think, well, Judas is bad. I mean, how can he do that, right? How can he betray Jesus for money? But the thing is, we have to ask ourselves, all of us, is what are we, every day that we live, and we have the opportunity to wake up, what is something that we're betraying Jesus for? Is it our time? Is it our phone? Is it the TV? Is it the video games? I mean, what are the things that we're also betraying Jesus for on our daily lives, right? And that doesn't just go for you, it goes for me. What about sleep? I'm pregnant right now, so we know that I probably like to sleep right now. Maybe that's something that I betrayed Jesus for. That time with God. So yes, what Judas did was wrong, but also too, we have to look, there's many times that we put God last. We put him second, and we always put something above him. So we have to examine ourselves. What is something or a sin that we're holding on to, right? And we're not letting go because we want to hold on to it, and we're allowing that to take the place of Jesus. So let's ask ourselves that. And so before we get into the Last Supper part of the study, I'll have Julio come and he'll give you your second challenge or task. Go ahead.
I'll go ahead and do it from back here. So that way I won't be in the video and they will
Okay.
scroll through. But the second task is take a selfie with everyone in your house.
Okay, so take a selfie. That's the second one. Task for your challenge is to take a selfie with what?
With everyone in your house.
So with everyone in your house, okay? So everyone that's there with you, take a selfie and make sure you send it to us. This is part of your challenge, okay? So let's go on. So the Last Supper in verse 7, let's get to there. It says, "Then came the day of unleavened bread on which the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed. Jesus sent Peter and John, saying, 'Go and make preparations for us to eat the Passover.' 'Where do you want us to prepare it?' they asked." Verse 10, it says, "He replied, 'As you enter the city, a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him to the house that he enters, and say to the owner of the house, "The teacher asks, where is the guest room, where I may eat the Passover with my disciples? He will show you a large room upstairs, all furnished. Make preparations there." Okay, so he's getting ready to have this Last Supper with them, right? And he's giving them instructions on where to go and where they're going to be having it, right? That day. In verse 13, it says, "They left and found things just as Jesus had told them. So they prepared the Passover. When the hour came, Jesus and his apostles reclined at the table, and he said to them, 'I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. For I tell you, I will not eat it again until it finds fulfillment in the kingdom of God.' After taking the cup, he gave thanks and said, 'Take this and divide it among you, for I tell you, I will not drink again from the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God comes.' And he took bread, gave thanks, and broke it and gave it to them, saying, 'This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me.' In the same way," we're on verse 20 now. "In the same way, after the supper, he took the cup, saying, 'This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you. But the hand of him who is going to betray me is with mine on the table.'" Okay, so we'll just end it there. We'll end it there today. And we'll go back, I'll backtrack a little bit. But basically what's going on is that Jesus goes and he sends Peter and he sends John to go make preparations for the Passover. Like I already told you, we recapped in Exodus. And what's going to happen is they're going to have this meal. They're going to go and have this meal. And if you remember, if you're not remembering like the Last Supper, everybody remembers the Last Supper of what? Of the picture that usually every house has on their wall, right? Of the 12 disciples and Jesus. So that's what we're learning today, what we're studying today. And so let's go to where it says, verse 14, it says that they reclined at the table. And he said, I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. So what's happening is Jesus already knows he's going to be betrayed, right? And he already knows that that he's gonna be put to death, right? And so he's basically having this last meal, the Last Supper, with his disciples. But it's just not a meal to say, oh, he had a meal, you know, before he died. It's even more deeper than that, guys. We have to remember that. Okay, so what does this mean for us, right? After we read this story from the Bible of the Last Supper, it means for us, if you take a look at it, guys, we said that in Exodus, right, what were the 3 things that they would have? They would have the bread, the bitter herbs, they would have a roasted lamb, most importantly, right? And so, and yeah, the blood, right? The blood was on the door frames, right? We see all those things, but now we're going back. Now we're fast forwarding from Exodus, and we're in Luke 22, right? And now Jesus is at this table, right? And they're having this Passover meal that they have done since they were freed, right, from being enslaved to the Egyptians, right, Pharaoh. And so now we're here in Luke 22, and guess what? When they're having this meal, why is there no lamb at the table, right? If we read that that's what they ate in the chapter in the book of Exodus, why is it here that we don't see that there is a lamb here at this table, a roasted lamb? Because we have to remember that who was going to be the lamb? If the lamb was sacrificed in Exodus, right, who was going to be sacrificed for this meal? Well, guess what? Jesus already knew that. He knew that he was going to be the lamb. He was going to take the place of the lamb, and he was the one that was going to be sacrificed, right? And just like the people in Exodus, right, the Israelites from Exodus, what did they do? They killed the lamb. They sacrificed the lamb. And remember, the lamb was not just an ordinary lamb. It was a spotless, it was an unblemished lamb, right? It was perfect. And so that's what Jesus was, right? So they got this perfect lamb. They sacrificed it. They got the blood and put it over their door, right? Because it was going to save them from the death, right? And so but fast forward to Luke, that's who Jesus is for us, right? And that's who he is for us today. He basically took the place of that lamb that they would sacrifice. And his blood is the one that saves us from our eternal death, right? Because when he's going to die on Friday, what we'll learn next week, when he's going to go and he's going to be sacrificed, guys, and his blood was shed for us, right? He was saving not just me, but he was saving you. He was saving your friends. He was saving your family. He did all that to save us from eternal hell, basically, right? If we come to accept him, right? If we've come to accept him and allowed him in our heart, right? Then we'll be with him for eternally, right? But in heaven. But if we don't, then we'll be separated from him, and you'll be in hell. But I'm just saying that his blood represented, guys, saving us from eternal death, right? Because remember, God can't look at sin, and we're sinful. But Jesus died on the cross to cleanse us, right? And be our ultimate sacrifice. And then you fast forward now, and like you always see when we do it at church, we do the what? The Lord's Supper, right? And what do we do with the Lord's Supper? It says we have the wine, and the bread, or we have our grape juice and we have our bread, right? And that represents what? What is the juice? What does that represent? It represents what? His blood. What does the bread represent? It represents his body, right? So we're no longer out there having to go and pick a lamb. Imagine you going out with your family and going and picking a lamb for Passover, right? To sacrifice it and so y'all can eat it and all these things. No, we don't have to do that anymore, because we have Jesus Christ who already did that for us, right? Mm-hmm. He was the ultimate lamb. And it says Jesus was sinless, right? Which means he was perfect, he was unblemished, he was not dirty, right? He was sinless. That's what it means. And so that's why we take the Lord's Supper, right? That's why we take it, because we remember, right? As believers in Christ, we remember what was done for us at the cross, right? And that's why we celebrate Easter. We can't celebrate Easter if we don't know all the things that led up to Easter. We don't know the real meaning of Easter, right? So that's why it's important for us to read, guys, because we need to know what it is we're believing in. how do we say we believe in Jesus Christ, but we don't even know him, right? And we won't know him until we open the word, until we're gonna only learn more about him in here, right? In the Bible. So that was our study for today, but next Wednesday be ready, because we're gonna be studying when we're gonna learn about when he's betrayed, and when they're gonna take him and he's gonna be crucified on the cross. But how many questions do we have left, Julio?
We have 3 more.
Okay, so I'm gonna let Julio read. Go ahead, Julio.
All the rest of 3?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll go ahead and read the last of the tasks and the questions. Question the third thing. What does the wine and bread represent in the chapter of Luke that we just read?
Luke 22.
Luke 22. Fourth thing. Send a video of yourself reciting a Bible verse by memory. Don't write it and post it on the wall and be reading it, because we'll be able to tell where your eyes are pointing or looking. The last one is, why do we as Christians celebrate Easter? What is the true meaning? All right.
Okay, so go ahead, and you have 5 questions or tasks that we give you to do. And so what you have to do is you have to complete all 5 of them, and either send them to me or send them to Julio, and we'll write your name on the list. And then if you complete it, we give you your prize, right? But also too, guys, let me see. We're gonna learn on next week on Wednesday, right, about when he's gonna get crucified and Judas is gonna hand him, and he's gonna betray Jesus. But it's kind of sad, because it says that his disciples are all gonna desert him. Jesus already knew he was gonna have this Last Supper with them, and then he knew that after that his disciples were all gonna basically scatter, and they were gonna leave him. So anyways, just things to think about. Let me know if you have any questions, and we love y'all, and we're praying for y'all, and we hope that we can get back to church very soon. Bye, guys.